Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. Today, we are talking about the financial impact of Jacksonville as a space tech hub and what that means for you as a rental property investor. They say that the wind chill kills the cattle in South Dakota, but today we are live on Facebook for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, the man that we call GC because of his genius concepts, because he generates cash flows, because he's a great co-host, and because his parents named him Greg Cohen. Say hello, Greg.
Hey, everybody. Great to be with you.
And the star of the show today, like Greg was just saying, a pillar in our community, a leader in economic development, a defector from Cleveland to Jacksonville, Florida. Greg, I bet you that makes you happy.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in Cleveland for a while. He is the CEO of the Jacksonville Aviation Authority. Joining us today, Mark VanLoh. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to the Not Your Average Investor Show family. As we like to say on this show, if you are looking to buy and hold rental properties, you've come to the right place. If you are looking to find out about the best property management practices for rental property investors, you're in the right place. And if you're looking to get an edge in the Jacksonville real estate market because you're a real estate professional and you want some extra opportunities for you and your clients, you're in the right place. We're going to hit a lot of that today with Mark talking about the Jacksonville market. But the next place to go, if you have a specific question and you want to add rental properties to your portfolio, want to know more about property management services, is go to chatwithjwb.com. And now, Mark, we got a little tradition. It's called the roll call. You ready for it?
I guess.
Like you said, every time I ask you a question, you got to answer. All right, here we go. John Henning, good afternoon. Stevie B, greetings all. Leo, good morning from California. Carl Thompson, good morning, everyone from Colorado. Bill Shields with his patented bilingual buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Welcome, Bill. Chris from the Hudson Valley. Hello, everybody. Who else do we got? We got Shelly Johnson from B-Town, beautiful Bradenton, Florida, by way of northern New Jersey, where she thought it was cold. Jen Filzen, the fairy godmother of our community, celebrating her birthday yesterday. Happy birthday to you, Jen Filzen. Hello, JWB
Happy
family.
Happy birthday, Jen.
Yeah, that's right. Happy birthday, Jen. Drew Barnhill joining us from Hotlanta, Georgia. Good to have you. Hervé Francois from New Jersey. Welcome, Hervé. Saori Bezuska from San Diego. Hello. Good to have you back as well. Great to be in the house here with the Not Your Average Investor Show fam. This, as you know, is an interactive show. We're getting to know Mark. We're going to ask him some really, really interesting questions about the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, how we're becoming a space tech hub, and what the future of that means, and the impact of real estate on aviation, which not many people know about. But Mark, let's start with the lead, right? We're talking about this Cecil Airfield becoming a space tech hub. You want to kind of tell me what's going on over there and why we're referring to this as a space tech hub?
Well, many of your viewers may not know this, but about 20 years ago, the Department of Defense and basically the Navy turned in that airfield. They didn't want it anymore. They consolidated. And so the city of Jacksonville took this massive Navy base and gave it to us and said, here, do something with this. We've got thousands of acres and lots of runways. And about 10 years ago, we decided, let's check out this whole space industry. We knew that it was going to start to become privatized, meaning NASA doesn't launch every rocket anymore, just like we saw last week with the splashdown of civilians. And so we wanted to be something in Florida other than Cape Canaveral. So we applied for a license, we received a license, and we were the first airport on the East Coast to have a space license. And what that means is we can eventually launch vehicles and equipment into outer space from the airport. And it's not what you think when you see a rocket go up from Cape Canaveral where it goes straight up. This is called a horizontal launch facility, meaning this big rocket is attached to a jet, a normal jet. It takes off like a normal airplane would, gets to altitude, and then it fires that rocket off into space. Once it gets into space, it opens up and lets go whatever it's carrying into orbit. The aircraft then actually turns around and lands back at the airport just like a normal airplane would. And you may say, well, why would anybody want to do this? Well, it's a fraction of the cost to launch a rocket horizontally than it is vertically. And then, of course, NASA is very busy. So it's hard to get time using their space facility in Florida. So here we are at an airport where you can launch small satellites and other equipment up for the Department of Defense into outer space for a fraction of the cost. And this is just starting as an industry. So you're on the ground floor.
That is so cool. And I appreciate you kind of just, I guess, sharing what this really is, because as I was preparing for our interview today, I was nervous because I'm like, I don't really get it. I don't really understand it. So thank you so much for explaining that. It's a horizontal launch. It's a rocket that's strapped to a jet, and then the jet returns back. I didn't get that. So could you just tell me, like, how new is this? Is this being done in other parts of the country already, or is it yet to be done?
It's not been done yet. There are several spaceports in the United States who also have licenses, and there hasn't been a launch yet. We lost a good 2 years because of the whole COVID thing. But there are many startup companies that are involved with this technology. We even had our first rocket test at the airport before COVID hit. So they're ready to go. Like I said, a lot of their customers are the Department of Defense. So they're putting up things in our atmosphere that we probably don't know too much about. But there are several companies doing this, and we hope to have a launch coming up in the next year.
I see. And take me a few steps down the path after this has become something that is done by the Department of Defense. Who will the ultimate client be of technology like this? Will this always be the Department of Defense that will be putting things into the atmosphere that way, or?
Not at all. I think really the Department of Defense has started the ball rolling because they pay. They pay people to do things for them. But I think eventually you're going to see, this is a huge communications platform. As I often say to people, you may be able to watch Netflix in Pakistan based on these hundreds of small nano satellites that are in the atmosphere, beaming satellite signals all around the world to anybody who wants them. And the beauty of these small little satellites, about the size of a football, is when they're finished with their mission, maybe 1 or 2 years, or the battery runs out, they fall to Earth and burn up into orbit. They're no longer considered space junk, which is a big issue right now with all the old satellites up in space. So this technology, as I said, is really evolving quickly, and it won't just be the satellites that they'll be putting up in outer space in the future.
Wow. And can you talk to me a little bit more about why Jacksonville is so well positioned to be a leader in this space as it emerges?
Well, it's handy. We are still competing with Cape Canaveral and NASA and all of that complex just south of here. But as I said, they're very, very congested there. It's hard to get time on the rocket pads for launches. And because we're in Florida, we have the ability to send up these rockets over the ocean, away from people, away from schools, residences, cities. And so you can't do that in a lot of places in the United States safely. And so Florida just is a natural for these space launches.
Makes a lot of sense as far as these launches go, the strategic positioning. I see the industry coming, right? Like this seems to be the world is becoming more and more interconnected, and our ability to send data to each other through efficient means that aren't telephone lines or whatever, and these little mini satellites clearly going to be happening. I could see industries from telecom to tech and all these other giants that are trying to win the communication war. Greg, what does that mean when you think about it, Greg? What does that mean for a real estate investor? What does that mean to you as an investor here in Jacksonville?
Well, I see a huge potential here, and the thing that I immediately think about when I'm investing my money in an asset class like rental properties, maybe in Jacksonville, is jobs and high-paying jobs, right? And if we're a leader here in this type of horizontal space launch, right, you can imagine that those are wonderful incomes. And it sounds like, and Mark, I'd love to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on maybe how big this could be as far as, I don't know, I guess how big this could be, because that could be a tremendous amount of jobs. And where is it located? Cecil Field, which is in the west side of Jacksonville, which is right next to one of JWB's 4 core neighborhoods. So I'm getting excited about not just the job base that we have today, but these things that over the next full market cycle, right, over the next 10 years, 20 years, Mark might be a better guide for the timeline. I'm not trying to pin him down, but these could be those next highly influential parts of the economy that are really poised for growth.
Well, it's funny, this whole COVID thing, and you never waste a good crisis. And so what we say is, yeah, we had a tough year, but this really sped up the process of people being able to work from home and not have to go into the office. So again, I'm in my home state of South Dakota in the dead of winter, and I don't have to go into work. I'm moving to Florida and doing this all, through the space, the telecom, and living on the beach somewhere. And Jacksonville was one of the top 5 cities last year for people to relocate due to not having to go to work. And so, in other words, I think Hawaii was one of them, of course, but it's a perfect place to do that kind of business because you have the accessibility to all these satellites in the future. And you call into work once a day from a satellite phone on the beach in Florida. Who could think of a better thing to do?
Absolutely. Those trends help Jacksonville's population growth, which has already been skyrocketing even before the COVID effect. And now it's just that trend is exacerbated. Mark, I got a question. I think I read somewhere just with the amount of space and the length of the runways that we have at Cecil, because it's an old military installation, that there just aren't a lot of other opportunities on the eastern seaboard to be able to do something like this. Am I understanding that correctly? Like, do we just have like some certain intangible assets here? And you think about the amount of growth opportunity and just the amount of space we have at Cecil that sets us up for success for this type of a mission as well?
Well, it does. Again, it's a great thing that it was a military base because there aren't many residences nearby to create noise. And so it's a wide open canvas. We've got a 12,500 foot long main runway, which is one of the longest runways in the entire state of Florida and anywhere near here that's civilian use. Most of the long runways belong to the military. So we inherited that. We have 3 other runways at Cecil. We have thousands of acres of property. Last December, we announced a Boeing campus. Boeing will be building a 100-acre campus to repair military aircraft, military fighter jets, and other civilian types of aircraft that they manufacture. So another 400 jobs, very well-paying jobs. And most of those people are going to want to live probably in one of your neighborhoods close by Cecil.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Mark, that's really interesting. So this Boeing facility, I imagine, is a we're talking a lot about the future here, right? Like this is, quite frankly, something that's coming down the line, right? COVID set that back a little bit. Now it's going to get back ramped up. It's going to grow. Boeing is more like a short-term job provider and whatnot. But as you and I spoke about this call ahead of time, Mark, you're not spending a lot of time thinking about Spacetech right now. You're running 4 airports here in the city. Can you kind of give us the scope and the breadth of what your role is here, the amount of people you employ, and kind of like what you are supporting right now and at the helm of that isn't just this like Spacetech facility that we're nerding out about?
Well, thanks for that. We are running the international airport, which is where most of the people and most of your audience understand that is needed for air travel, moving passengers. That's our primary focus here, the international airport. But we also work incredibly close with the Convention and Visitors Bureau here. We work with JAX USA, the Chamber, trying to entice companies to move to Florida. And so when they're looking to shop their new headquarters, one of the questions they always ask, other than how are your schools, what are your taxes like? Well, we already know what the taxes are like in Florida. They don't exist. But one of those top questions is usually, what kind of air service do you have? And how can I get my employees moving around the world easily? And so we're just a utility here for our people to use as site selectors. Just like when you go to you tap in your bathroom and you turn the faucet on, you expect water to come out. Here in Jacksonville, when you want to book a ticket, you expect to be able to get from our airport to anywhere in the world. And so that's just one of the aspects we offer as far as aviation. But we also have 2 other airports here, other than the Spaceport, that are related to aviation. As a matter of fact, one of them is a small little airport called Hurlong, where if you have your own airplane and you want to go work on it on a Saturday, or you maybe want to take flying lessons or learn how to fly a glider, that's the airport to do it at. And then another airport we have is Craig, which is where the corporate jets hang out. So those businesses that want to relocate here usually have a corporate jet or 2 in their fleet. That's where they will base them. So we feel we can offer anything to do with aviation to a prospective client coming and living in Jacksonville. We can cover anything they want.
Mark, got a question for you. Out of those different clients that you're serving right there, Jacksonville International and Craig and Herlong, they serve very different needs. Maybe over the next 10 years, what do you see as the fastest growing segment out of those three?
I would probably say the corporate jets. Now you don't have to buy your own corporate jet. You can use Netflix or a flex jet or somebody like that, where you're buying like a timeshare. You get so many hours a year on this business jet, and you can use it whenever you want, however you. I think a lot of the travelers are really getting tired of and I hate to say this because we run a passenger airport, but they're really getting tired of the security protocols and taking your shoes off and the delays and the waits and the connecting over Atlanta, which no one seems to like to do. Sorry. So, and many times when you're flying a group of your executives to, maybe you have a small plant in North Carolina, not near a major city, it's cheaper to rent a business jet and fly your team there for the day, have lunch, do your business, and come back. It's much cheaper. You'll save hours and hours of time, and you're sleeping in your own bed when you get back at night. So I think the corporate jets are going to continue to be strong. Some of these new aircraft, if you've seen the pictures, they're beautiful. And I'm daring you, once you fly one of those, you'll never go back to flying on a passenger aircraft again.
That's the feel that I had too. You think about the increases in technology to be able to get the cost down. I would imagine from where they were probably 10 years ago and probably where they will be in 10 years. And, there's convenience is something that people will pay for, especially as we continue to grow as an economy and have more disposable income and whatnot. You got to think that's the thing. I agree with you as far as the business travel on a daily basis. I've talked to a few folks that I'm close with, and they do that every single day or every single week. And they jump on a flight from Craig, and then they go to Tampa for a meeting, they come home. And, especially if they have 4 or 8 people in their organization that they're taking, it's not astounding. It's kind of, I'd be surprised, but it's probably economical at that point. And I just never thought of that in the past, but I think that's wonderful.
And some of these corporate jets they make now, you can fly nonstop to London, anywhere from here. It's amazing.
Interesting. I never thought about the shared economy is affecting all of us, right? It affects Greg's business, the way that it's also affecting your business, right? And these like macro trends and how they manifest from, Airbnb for real estate to these corporate jet cards that make these experiences accessible to all of us. And it sounds like whatever flavor is happening, whether it is this corporate jet, whether there eventually is a shared economy for space travel, or space launches, or even whatever the commercial thing, it seems like the JAA is almost like a microcosm of Jacksonville as a well-rounded economy. You have a well-rounded offering of aviation.
We do, absolutely. And we're very fortunate here to have this many facilities, and they're scattered all around the city. So, a lot of people who maybe live in St. Augustine would have to face that drive to the international airport to fly, which is probably about an hour on the roads, where you could use a corporate jet at one of the other airports and be there in minutes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So Mark, let's talk about Jacksonville Airport, right? The commercial airport that we all have likely used. You were telling us recently, you just told us it's a bit of a recruiting tool, right? Like you were telling me that you won some. Tell us about this award that the airport seems to win often.
Well, there's an organization we belong to called Airports Council International. And every year they do a passenger survey. They go out and they send them to all the airports involved, and it's a quality index, and there's numbers, and I'm bad at math, but every year Jacksonville seems to win that in our category. And we're a medium-sized airport in the United States, and it's customer index, and we win based on how easy it is to get here, how easy it is to park, navigating the terminals. They're bright, they're airy, they're clean. A whole different set of factors, but we've been winning this thing for some time now. So it just goes to show you that we're a very pleasing airport to customers who aren't from here.
I agree. It is a hidden gem, like, let's be honest, like the status or the standard for airport travel has been low for a long time. And I think you tend to expect that when you go to an airport. So when you go to an airport like Jacksonville International Airport, and it's bright and it's open and it's airy, and you have jazz musicians playing in art studios in the concourse, you're like, oh my goodness, wow. Listen, I don't, this is kind of cool. And there, it's been a hidden gem even nationally. This is going back a few years, but I remember Erin Burnett from CNN came out and she did a whole, segment on Jacksonville International Airport. She called it was the best airport in the entire country, according to her. So it's like one of those things that it doesn't get a whole lot of press until you're there. And then you get there and you're like, wow, this is really great.
When you step off the airplane, I want you to know you're in Florida. We've got the terrazzo tiles everywhere with sea creatures in them, and it's bright, airy, it's blue. You can see the sky, and palm trees are everywhere. People know where they are when they land here.
I would love to hear from the community in the chat. I'm sure that most of you have traveled in and out of the airport. Have you had that experience? GC, right now that you mentioned it, the jazz musicians, man, I forget that happens. It's such like a quality of life thing. You walk past these rocking chairs, there's someone just killing silent whisper on the saxophone or whatever it is. It really is a great experience. I'd love to hear in the chat. Do you feel that difference when you're traveling in the Jacksonville airport? Is it different than your hometown airport? Is that something that you have felt or something like that? I would love to hear from that. Mark, what I want to hear from you is you work real hard at bringing these direct flights, and it all has a direct correlation to how well the economy is doing and what people are asking for. Can you describe to us, I guess let's just start with what decision drivers, what do you look for when you are trying to recruit a direct flight somewhere else? What informs that decision, and what are you bringing to the airlines to try to talk them into that?
Well, probably the first thing we get is the Department of Transportation keeps incredible records of everybody that flies. So we can see the numbers of people and the destinations. So we have a top 10 list of cities that we don't have direct service to, but a lot of people from Jacksonville are flying. And you may say, well, how do they know that? And we also know those people that live in Jacksonville who are driving to Orlando to fly, and we know who you follow you home one of these nights. So you buy a ticket, you use your credit card. There's a zip code associated with your credit card. And then we look and see which city you departed from. So if you have a 32256 zip code in Jacksonville and your first departure city was MCO, how'd you get there? You drove. We know that. And we know that for all these destinations. And so for years, Los Angeles area, the Bay Area too, were one of our top destinations we knew we needed to get service on. And we were talking to the Chamber of Commerce folks and the recruitment people, and they were talking to a lot of California companies who really wanted to come to Florida because of tax incentives and the quality of life, but they just couldn't make that decision because it was hard to get here. You had to make a stop or two. And so we've been working with them, Daniel Davis from JAX USA, and we went after an airline with that information intact, in tow. We said, here are the number of people that fly to Los Angeles every single day from Jacksonville. And they were amazed. They didn't know. We also talked to LA folks, and we said, what's your number one biggest city on the East Coast that you don't have nonstop service to? Guess what it was? Jacksonville. Really? That's a double win. You take that information to an airline, and we can prove several hundred people a day will be on a flight. It's a no-brainer. And fortunately, JetBlue took us up on that offer, and they started nonstop LA service this spring, and it's doing wonderfully. And there's more cities to come. There are more cities out there that we need to work on. So we use anything possible to get the airline's attention. And usually, they don't care how nice our parks are, or how wonderful our beaches are, how great the surfing is here. They want to know how many butts we're going to put in their seats every single day of the year so they can make a profit. And that's all it's about.
Man, that's really wonderful. I had no idea the coordination between the key influencers in our city working together, right? And it's aviation, and of course it's the Chamber of Commerce and JAX USA and the business partnerships there. And I'm sure it's our port authority, and it's our transportation authority. Nat Ford is another guest that we've had on the show, right? And when we're all working together with our major influences in key parts of the economy, I'm assuming that has that kind of team effect, can really lure some of these companies, you were letting me know that, it's one of the earliest questions that people ask when they're thinking about bringing their organization to Jacksonville and having a headquarters. It's, what's the status of the airport? Do we have direct flights, right? So I guess one of my thoughts here, and I may be way off, but I've thought that it takes a long time to get direct flights to come to the airport, right? It doesn't seem to happen all that often, right? Do you see now, because of population growth now, and we have more flights and we have, I would imagine, a better story to tell for more direct flights coming to Jacksonville, do you see it being easier and easier and more prevalent to get more direct flights maybe over the next 5 years than maybe it was for the previous 5 years?
Well, it certainly has in the last 2 months. 2 weeks ago, we started nonstop service to Austin, Texas on American. And that's unusual for an airline to not fly to its hub in Dallas, but to fly to Austin also. That was a big win for us. But I'm glad you mentioned the Port Authority here, because we had known for some time there's a lot of connectivity between us and Puerto Rico. I guess 90% of the goods and services Puerto Rico has comes through our port on a boat. So there's a lot of travel there. And we went to the airlines and said, hey, how about nonstop service to San Juan? That starts November 1st. So we're very excited about that. That's another win for us. And then we're also talking with the Mayo Clinic, where there aren't many Mayo Clinics in the United States, as you know, Minnesota here. And there's one in Phoenix, Arizona, which happens to be a pretty big airport and a pretty good destination for us. So we've been talking to the airlines to say, hey, there's a lot of connectivity between the two Mayo hospitals with doctors and nurses and patients. And so we're hoping that we get Phoenix announced very soon in the coming year.
Wow. That's really wonderful to share. Thank you for sharing all that information. That is really, really cool. And I would imagine that, I guess I'm trying to see like where the growth opportunities would be for the airport. And if you're looking at other established relationships, whether we have lots of goods and services that are already changing hands between a certain city, that's got to be one of your key indicators. Okay, great. Let's go there. Let's see how the data looks, see how many butts and seats we could get and give to that airline and say, how do we get a direct flight here?
Absolutely. And right, I hate to say this, but right before COVID hit, we'd been spending some time in London, and we were getting very close to a nonstop to the United Kingdom. That's one of our top destinations without service, and we're one of their biggest cities that they don't have nonstop service to. Of course, we all know what happened with business travel in the United States and the United Kingdom, but again, we'll put that back on the agenda as we come out of this pandemic.
That's exciting. Sorry, Greg.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm thinking about the other main sources of economy and key drivers, right? It's no secret that the Jacksonville Jaguars have that partnership with the NFL to be able to, establish that connection, that exposure to the fan base for the NFL and for the Jags. And I don't know, maybe I'm way off, but I would imagine that had an influence for why we are, again, one of the top destinations that they don't have a direct flight to in London. Is that right?
It's funny you mentioned that, because we actually went to, and this was before COVID 2 years ago, we went to that JAX game at Wembley Stadium in London. We got a suite, and we invited foreign airlines to come and watch an American football game and see how great everything was in Florida. So again, it's a marketing tool, but we're not ashamed to use it whenever we can.
Wonderful.
I love it. I love the idea of American football as the ambassador abroad, right? And that is, it's such a big part of our culture, and we talk a lot about it on the show. That's why we made that joke about Cleveland, because Greg's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, right? Mark, let me ask something more directly, right? So we're talking about how connecting great cities that have intertwined economic opportunity drive air travel. What is the economic impact of getting a new direct flight as far as jobs go, right? Like if JetBlue all of a sudden has a new route from LAX to Jacksonville, is that 15 new jobs? Do you break it down to numbers like that? And I guess overall, just if you could tell us about how many people the airport employs and how big a business is the commercial airport part?
It would be the economic impact of just this airport, I believe, is $3 billion a year. Just this airport. That's not talking about other airports. And the number of employees is difficult to gauge, because the airlines really don't share a lot of that with us. And because JetBlue is already servicing Jacksonville, They probably added a couple more people to handle the LA. It's when you get a new airline to come to town and they have to bring all the staff here. And then and on top of that, you could get possibly what's called a crew base, where they provide hotel rooms because the airplane is overnighting and those flight crews have to stay somewhere. And so that's an additional revenue source for the entire community. So every airline and every route is a little different, and depending on the route, of course. But what's so unusual about the nonstop Los Angeles service is that's a long flight. And that plane is in the air a long time. And most of the time, by the time that crew gets here, they're unable to keep flying because they've just been on a nonstop from LA. So they've got to go somewhere and rest. And then you have to have another crew ready to take the flight back to LA if that's in fact where it's going. So there's a lot of people in and out of Jacksonville that are staying here in hotels for every single one of our long flights.
And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but the North Side neighborhood for JWB is a neighborhood that is around the airport. How do you think about kind of like the employment base that is for the airport adjacent things and stuff like that, how it affects the drivers for JWB investors?
Yeah, I mean, the airport is one of those key drivers, just like the port, just like our Jacksonville Transportation Authority, and all of the good things we're doing with autonomous vehicle, Hub 2, oh goodness, forgot the accelerator that we have.
Hub 2C, something or another, right?
Yeah, Hub 2C. Oh man, Nat better not watch this. He's gonna know that I messed that up. Anyways, you've got these key functions of our economy right now that support our job base. And when you have those key functions that perform so well and you see rents growing like they are and home prices growing like they are, right? That's a function of population growth and jobs. And so where we are today, even if we didn't have these wonderful things that we're talking about with adding new direct flights, maybe adding new carriers to come to Jacksonville International Airport, and if we're not even talking about those next level things like maybe the spaceport, right? And what impact that could have, right? We have a $3 billion impact just with JIA right now, Jacksonville International Airport right now, right? If you're thinking about where to put your dollars and you're thinking about investing in a city and maybe the numbers look good on that property evaluation, but it's in some place that is not surrounded by key economic anchors like the airport or like the port or like a downtown that has 55,000 jobs, then you're creating risk in your portfolio. So when I think about the impact that we have today, even if we didn't get any bigger or better or grow any more, which I know is not possible, and that wouldn't happen because we have Mark's leadership here, but even if we didn't, like, wow, we have these incredible economic assets. Now, when you layer on the future growth that we expect, and especially if our key leaders are working together like we are right now, that's where Jacksonville can go from being seen as kind of like a third tier or a second tier city to being closer to that first tier city that you hear about, which is the goal over time.
Got it. And Mark, you were telling me, speaking of the real estate angle, one of the eye-opening things that you told me about on our onboarding conversation is you actually use real estate data as part of your arsenal. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
We do, and it's all public information. I don't have any friends in the tax office, but as I said, we were trying to get nonstop Phoenix service, and we know Mayo is a great partner. But we wanted to see how many people live in Arizona that have a condo on the beach near Jacksonville. So you go to the tax assessor and you find out, where are you sending tax bills for these properties, these condos and apartments and homes on the beach? And we check the area, the zip codes around Phoenix and Arizona, and we find there's quite a few people that live out there full time that have residences part-time in Florida, Ponte Vedra, St. Augustine, Jacksonville. And so again, we take that information to the airlines and say, look at the connection here. Those people are going to be coming out here several times a year to see their property, maybe even stay in it. And so there's another customer that no one's thought of. And it's just being able to use those resources that are available to anyone to make your case.
And Mark, hearing you talk about that data, which is readily available, brings me back to the beginning days of JWB, because when we were first started to learn about how to buy undervalued properties, we went to the free places to get access to the information, right? We didn't have any money in the beginning. So my business partners and I would scour the tax assessor's office, and we would look and see which pieces of real estate had a different mailing address than the one that is the address for the mailing or for the property. And because our thought was, well, if that person is an absentee owner, they might not care about the investment as much. We might be able to buy their property. So it's coming for us full circle now to hear one of the leaders of our main economic drivers also uses bits and pieces of that same information to make key decisions. That's wonderful.
So does the JAA have like a team of data analysts that are looking at this stuff nonstop, right? Like I could see JWB as a young, scrappy company combing through that. But Mark, how do you have like a data strategy to like accumulate this stuff? How do you guys go around consolidating this stuff to make your plan?
Well, that's all handled in our marketing department. And so we have an couple air service people there that talk to the airlines and they know them well. But then we also have a consultant, like most people do, that all this information goes into, and they data mine and do what they need to do and send us reports on, hey, here's some top prospects. Let's look at this. So it's kind of handled jointly between us and outside counsel.
Makes sense. And so the last bit of data I would love to talk about, and we have this question from Ken Moline, who lives in the Silicon Valley area, and he's asking, how close are you to a direct flight between San Jose, California, and Jacksonville, which you may or may not have a date on. But more than just that is we keep hearing about this tech migration, how Jacksonville was one of the top cities for tech migration, how Florida has this mass tech migration. From your perspective, what can you tell us about the tech migration?
Just from what I hear from our folks and friends over at JAX USA, they don't need to be in Silicon Valley anymore. They can be doing this anywhere and setting up, labs and R&D and even corporate headquarters. And so we're seeing a lot of that they want to be. If you can live anywhere you want to be, why stay in the snow and ice and come to a favorable tax climate? And so we're seeing so much more of that in the last 5 years than I think ever before.
Is there anything in the works for the San Jose kind of flight, or San Francisco or Oakland or anything like that?
You mentioned it, not San Jose for some reason, but a much stronger destination would be San Francisco. And why would you say that? Because of United. It's a big United station. And then you can fly from here to San Francisco and then connect and go anywhere in Asia or anywhere in the world from San Francisco. So that would be the connection. Oakland's a strong possibility too, with some of their ties and recent announcements to Hawaii from Oakland that are very, very inexpensive. So, but I would say San Jose is probably third on the list of 3 airports that would get the service.
Okay. And Mark, let's take like a wild, turn here. You're a guy, I look through your career track record. I would assume that as a head of departments like these, you move around a lot because the opportunity is not to stay where you are, but to go elsewhere. And I say that to say that you've had a wide data set of living somewhere, of arriving somewhere, having a kind of a short-term, maybe like window. You got here to Jacksonville 3 years ago, parallel, like around the time I got here. What has been your impression of how this city operates, what the macro climate is for opportunity here from what you've seen? I mean, you've lived through a transcendent event at this, like, I don't know where you were in 2008, but maybe you can, I don't know if that compares, but what's your overall kind of like perception of the Jacksonville business climate and how it operates with the public-private sector link?
Well, as you said, I've lived in all different kinds of areas, and hello to my friends in Jersey. I've lived there, and I've worked with different kinds of agencies, and that's the key. Because here in Jacksonville, we're an authority. We're a governmental unit, kind of independent, but I've worked for major cities like Cleveland, where the bureaucracy sometimes get in the way, and it's tough for a business to go to the source and get what they need to do and get the approvals they do. And what I found in Jacksonville, my first impressions were, wow, this city is spread out. And the stats are this is the largest city in the United States because there's no county. The county is the city, which is unusual for people to understand, and you really have to see it to believe it. So that tells me you can still live in the city of Jacksonville and live on the beach or away from the beach. You can live near the river. You can live anywhere and still be in the city. And by not having a separate county government, that just takes another layer of bureaucracy that I don't think we need. And it's certainly proven here in Jacksonville every day. So, and then I found out right away, starting off and getting on the board of the chamber and belonging to all these other agencies, as a member, how connected the city really is. It's a small city. It's not as big as you think, because we all know each other and we all see each other constantly. I was just at a function this weekend for the Gator Bowl Commission, and I'm surprised how many people I already knew on that board. I'm only been here three years, so it was a fantastic event. And we do these things a lot, and so we're together constantly. We all know what's going on. We all know what each other's doing, and if we can help, we jump in.
I love that concept. It's not something I really thought of. I kind of thought that I guess I shouldn't have thought about it, but I always kind of thought that the Port Authority did its thing, and that JAX USA did its thing, and that, Jacksonville Aviation Authority did its thing, and that it's really wonderful to hear all of our key leaders working together. I'm trying to think about the just like the assets that we're working with here in Jacksonville. And Pablo, I loved your question about the perspective. Mark, I'd love to get a little bit more perspective here. The fact that I guess I'm wondering, Mark, what are your measures for success within your organization? And then when you look at some of the assets that we have here, I think of population growth being a huge asset to help you accomplish your goals, right? And I think about just the intangible assets that we have here that make people want to move here, right? And move their business here, and the amount of space that we have, and the fact that we have this military base that we now have that allows us to do this spaceport. Could you talk about maybe the measures of success and how we compare with those assets, maybe compared to some of your other stops in Cleveland or in Tulsa, or maybe your friends in the industry and other aviation authorities?
Well, we all tend to gauge on airports internally on the number of passengers. That's the big indicator of how well we're doing our growth. And in 2019, Jacksonville was the fastest growing medium airport in the United States. We grew the fastest in a year, more than anybody else, even more than Austin, Texas, or Nashville. So that's how we kind of gauge each other. And having the most passengers isn't necessarily the most successful, but it depends on your growth year to year. We want to be able to show that we are breaking even or making a profit. We want the airlines to be happy, we want our customers to be happy. So there's a lot of different metrics we use to see how well we're doing as an airport. Of course, winning that customer satisfaction award, that's usually the top of the list, because then your customers love you and they're going to continue to return to Jacksonville. Some of the assets I think the city has, and I'm glad to see we're finally making some waves on this, is a riverfront. I've been in other cities that had that. And I just felt when I moved here that there was a lot of space downtown that really wasn't being used to its fullest. And so I've seen all these drawings now and conceptions of hotels and event space. We've already got an NFL team, and that's an incredible asset. And I've lived in cities that didn't have one. And it's after leaving Kansas City and going to a city that didn't have an NFL franchise, it was night and day. And that's a big draw. And we get a lot of traffic from those passengers and fans. So again, but being spread out and being able to put any kind of business that wants to come here, find them a home. And that's the key.
Yeah, I just think about being in a city that didn't have an NFL team or didn't have population growing and putting the business plan together or the next 5-year vision statement. I mean, we've got a lot of tools to be able to work with here. And knowing what you see as far as the opportunities within the city, if you maybe step outside the Aviation Authority, what out of the big opportunities that we have within the city, it's clearly the riverfront is important for you. Maybe what are a couple of other opportunities that you think would be major wins for Jacksonville overall and probably for the Aviation Authority as well?
Well, I think it's probably similar to what the downtown agencies would agree with, is that a more residential development downtown. And I think we need another convention hotel, because we bring conventions here too as aviation. I don't think a lot of the world knows that we're on the beach. People think, and some people think Jacksonville's part of Southern Florida. Or we're inland. They don't realize that we're on the beach. We have beachfront property in Jacksonville. So this isn't typically one of their vacation destinations. Unfortunately, they all want to go see Mickey in Orlando or the beaches, but they don't realize that we have that too. And that's something that we'll continue to work with the convention and visitors to get that word out, that this is a destination to go to the beach and hang out and do some of the other things you do in any other city.
Mark,
Yeah,
let me ask
absolutely.
you-
Just to kind of dovetail on a couple of those points in a recent episode we had with Daniel Davis, we talked about how our goal as a city is to have 10,000 residents living downtown. And for many years, we were stuck at that number of about 3,000 or 3,500. And last count, we're over 6,000 residents living downtown. And there's a lot of economic activity going on downtown right now, a lot of projects that are underway. It seems like there's a new article and JWB's in a lot of those articles as far as new projects that are being taken down. And it's because of this kind of coordinated clustering effect that we can have to where we can bring residents living downtown. What that does is that creates more restaurants, grocery stores, bars, nightlife, amenities for more people to want to live downtown. And that causes more people to want to work downtown. And that brings businesses downtown. And ultimately what that does.
I want that convention business in Jacksonville.
There we go. And I'm convinced the more people that live downtown and the more businesses that we have downtown, then it becomes more and more feasible for us to do that. And then we raise median incomes. And if we're thinking again about putting our real estate investment hat on, when you raise median incomes, you take the lid off of what your potential returns can be for your investment properties. Because ultimately, if your median incomes don't rise, then it doesn't matter what supply and demand is in the marketplace. If people can't afford it, they're not going to be able to pay the price for the house. So yeah, so that convention center. So what do you think? Do you think that's a possibility?
The Florida Airports Council here in July, I think it was July or August, we had 700 attendees.
Wow.
And we were all in the Hyatt Hotel, great property, but every night, 700 plus their spouses wanted to go do something. And so right off the bat, you couldn't get into Calford to eat. It was packed every night, and that was because of us. And some people started to venture out a little bit. We even had water taxis going across the river to the other side, to those restaurants. And then you go to another convention city like Nashville, and it's walkable. And I think eventually we'll get there. Having another hotel down there, some more restaurants, something connected to the stadium, and Bay Street could be a wonderful walking opportunity. But again, to get that, you've got to have customers. You've got to have people that live in downtown, and every night they're going out to dinner. And I think we're on the right track. I've certainly seen a lot about it lately.
Absolutely. It's going to take small projects and big projects to get there. And we've got both of those moving right now. For anybody who's new to the show and hasn't heard about the Shipyards project, they've just come out with new renderings, which is an investment group headed up by Shad Khan, who's the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and working with the city now to get that in place. And then there's a lot of smaller projects. JWB's to develop commercial projects downtown near City Hall. We've got 3 buildings that are right next to each other right there on Hogan Street. And there's a number of our developer friends are in that area. We've got a number of other properties right a few streets down the road. And it's this clustering effect to make it something that you're not going to solve all of downtown overnight. But if you can take an area, a small area, and have a lot of development happen in a short period of time, you can change the perception. And that's really that goal right there.
Yeah, and I've seen that myself, right? Like we talk about the neighborhood I lived in Miami, that was just like this very small cluster that ended up becoming this like world-class destination. Mark, as somebody that moves around a lot also, right? And putting this real estate investor hat on, how do you think about real estate in your moves? Like, do you buy a home everywhere you go? You know, how is moving to Jacksonville different? Do you invest in real estate? How do you think about real estate? Is it a part of your life?
Early on in my career, I'm trying to think. I have purchased a home every time because I had a family, I had small kids, and even moving to Jacksonville when the kids are all out of the house and grown, we still, we wanted to invest in the community, and so you buy a house. It's the best investment, and we didn't think twice about it. Now, some of those cities I've lived in, had I known that the mayor would change hands and I would be looking for another position elsewhere, because that's usually some of those political jobs were, probably wouldn't have bought a house because the turnaround, the appreciation wasn't there. But in most places, it's always been a great investment.
I would imagine that if you bought a house 3 years ago in Jacksonville when you moved here, you're pretty pumped about where it's at right now, right?
I certainly am. And, going back to my original comment, when I moved to New Jersey, I did not buy a house in New Jersey. It was really, I think the mortgage interest was, it might've been double digit back then. This was back in the late 80s. It was a terrible time to own property in New Jersey. So I lived in various rental spaces. That's the only time I haven't bought a house.
Interesting.
Can certainly understand that 10%, 15% interest, whatever it was. When I talked to my parents in the house that we were growing up, and we paid 18% interest on the mortgage. They purchased that house in 1981. And I just can't even get into the headspace of paying 18% on your mortgage. Like what? I mean, it's
I don't
just
know
so
how you
different.
catch up. I don't know how you do it.
All right, we
Much
got one
different
more.
ballgame.
We got one more question here from Chris in the audience. Yes, is there any future expansions for JIA in the works for the international airport?
Thank you for saying something. I completely forgot. Right before COVID happened, we were already starting to plan for Concourse B, which is another part of the terminal at Ed's gates. And of course, that shut it down. But just recently, we started the design process back up. That will get us 6 new gates with a possible ability to expand to another 6, so another 12 gates. And there'll be a long finger coming out, from, if you know our terminal, between A and C. It goes right straight out. It'll have all the restaurants and shops. It'll have a new airline club in it. And the design should be finished middle of next summer, with construction probably a couple years after that. So unfortunately, I wish we would have continued with the project during COVID. We didn't know where that was going, so we had to stop it. So again, we lost another year, but we're very excited about that expansion here, and that should get us well into the future.
How do you make a decision like that? Let's throw the COVID curveball out of there. How do you make a decision to do a new expansion like that? Is it what key factors go in there? Like how do you sell the city on it?
If you've flown into Jacksonville late at night, you'll see exactly why that decision is needed, because we are a parking lot for airlines. There are not enough gates for all the airplanes that are here overnight. And that happens during the day a few times a day, where you may be sitting in an airplane and the pilot says, well, we're waiting on a gate. That's the reason, because there's not enough gates to go around. And as airlines come and go, we've got a couple new airlines that just started service in the United States, VanLoh and Breeze. So those are new prospective customers to come to Jacksonville. We're going to have to find them gates. So it's something you can see coming, and you start to plan it. It takes so long to build a terminal nowadays with everything involved.
Interesting.
Yeah, Mark, this has been super, super enlightening to see how all these pieces fit together, how the Aviation Authority both feeds other departments of the city and also eats from other departments of the city, right? And how intertwined the whole ecosystem has been really illuminating. The Spacetech conversation was great. The way that y'all kind of are data monsters and how you leverage data to your advantage, I think is really interesting. And all the decision making and your vision for Jacksonville. Is there anything we haven't asked you about? Is there anything else that you want to throw out there, or did we hit on everything? I'm glad we got to that expansion, right?
I would have been, my departments would have killed me if I had not mentioned that, because we're very excited about that endeavor. But I think we hit just about on everything we do.
Great. Well, listen, we appreciate you hanging out with us here for an hour. We really, really appreciate our community. We've had 30 plus people here on the call this whole time. Taking an hour out of your day in the middle of a Tuesday never falls on deaf ears for us. And we really, really appreciate it. Like we say, if you came here to learn about, rental property investing, property management, and especially the Jacksonville market and getting an edge in the Jacksonville market, you've been in the right place. Next place to go is chatwithjwb.com. Thursday, Greg is not going to be here, but we're going to do a rental income property investor of the week. we're gonna go over our typical rental property, but we're also going to have Brandon Thompson on, who is JWB's newest, what's the title? Account executive?
Yeah, sales account executive.
Sales account executive. He comes from he is an investor himself. He was a portfolio manager in the financial services and, really service mentality. And he's had his ups and downs of rental property investing. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting conversation of what's informed his decisions. And we hope to see you there. And, Mark, it's such an honor for me to be the host of this content stream and get to talk to decision makers like yourself. So I want to, thank you deeply for hanging out with us for an hour, for how gracious you've been on the whole process, setting everything up. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm going to give it to GC here for the last words.
I'm going to echo a lot of that, but Mark, just thank you so much. It's been a combination of just really cool insight that I didn't know a whole lot about, and I don't think many people in our audience really knew a whole lot about, mixed with just a really fun, informal, personal conversation. And, I don't really think that you get both of those things, especially, when you talk to some really high powered leaders in a city, and you just made it so personable and just been a ton of fun. So I just want to say thank you so much for what you're doing thanks for spending a few minutes with us. And, we'd love to have you back on the show here in the future as well. And you can continue to update us on the success of the Jacksonville Aviation Authority.
Well, thank you. And your questions made the show. I mean, they were fantastic questions. You hit on everything that some things I didn't even think of. So again, fantastic hosts of both of you.
All right. We'll see you all next week.
Take
care,
care,
Mark.
everybody.
Bye.